Hi there! So, you might not know this, but every character in Dead by Daylight comes with lore, a backstory, a reason for doing what they do. And I really enjoy reading this lore. I made a whole channel with my twin where we're planning an animated story set in the entity's realm. Though, while rereading all of the original lore for this video, I noticed a bit of a pattern. Killer stories from Dead by Daylight's early days are short, not very detailed. And as we go through, you'll notice the stories will get longer. So today I wanted to put my knowledge to good use and do a bit of a compare and contrast between the lore version of every original killer and their in-game designs. Is the killer that I'm playing and seeing the same character from their story? Also, I'm not talking about tome lore for the most part because I don't want this video to be an hour long. Also, you might be asking why I'm only covering original killers. It's because those are the characters that the designers had complete control over with their in-game design and their story. The same can't be said about licensed killers. Oh, that's funny. My script says that I recreated every original killer story in a custom game. That must be a typo. Evan idolized his father, who slowly went insane running the Macmillan estate. His father was abusive to his workers, and Evan wanted to help them start a union. The workers betrayed Evan and sold him out to his father. He led a bunch of people into dark tunnels and sealed them there. This was, in the DBD universe, the worst mass murder in modern history. This is a pretty typical slasher: parental issues, a poor upbringing, and a violent approach to problem solving. Trapper is wearing overalls, he's strong and weathered, clearly a working man. I do wish they showed a bit more of him being the son of a rich man, because he mostly looks like a worker. He has spikes in his back, which from what I can tell is the entity bullying him. He's got the blood-covered machete, and he has a mask with a toothy smile. This is a slasher. It doesn't take much to match his story, but I'd say that Trevor and Evan Macmillan have enough similarities to say that they match well. Philip had a very sad childhood, and he was followed by darkness his whole life. Eventually, he moved to America from Nigeria for a new beginning. He worked at Autohaven Wreckers, which was a scrapyard with some shady things happening about. Philip was unknowingly participating in this shady business because, in his job of crushing cars into small cubes, he was also disposing of bodies. He got mad and killed his boss and ripped out his spine, which is what he uses as his weapon. See, I'm already kind of riled up because I have some issues with Wraith's design. When he was brought into the fog, he was a scrapyard worker, or like a mechanic. Nothing about this outfit speaks to that. No chains, no mechanical parts, nothing. He has an outfit that feels more lore accurate, but that's not his base design. And I'm thinking, like, they didn't have to make his entire story revolve around Autohaven Wreckers. The only saving grace of this mismatched design is the weapon, which is in fact the skull and spine of his shady boss. I'm sad to say, Philip and the Wraith do not match. Max was born deformed, and his parents hated him for it. They forced him to live in isolation, essentially being raised by a television. When the boy escaped, he got revenge on his parents. He took over the farm, taking out his anger on the animals that were allowed to roam free when he wasn't. Even long after Max's disappearance, you can still hear the sound of a chainsaw on the Coldwind farm. Hillbilly had a very sad upbringing, and it's reflected in his design. His clothes are tattered, which is a pattern we'll see a lot of. His face is deformed, he's covered in grime and blood. He's got that big hammer thing, which I'm sure has a name, but I don't know it. He's got the physical build of a farm boy with none of the loving parents. The Hillbilly and Max match well. His lore is really short, so that's about all I have to say on it. Sally had a loving husband who loved her so much that he died. She needed a job, so she started working at the Crotus Pren Asylum, which was a mental hospital. She slowly lost her mind, seeing the worst of humanity, and she snapped and killed everyone. I actually looked up nurse uniforms in the 1920s, which is, I believe, the time period that Sally was from, and yep, that's a nurse uniform. Like every other killer so far, Nurse's clothes are tattered and worn out. She's got a bone saw, which is used by medical practitioners, I assume, and she's got the bag over her head. Considering she lost her mind, it kind of makes sense that she doesn't want to be seen or see herself. You can tell that Sally and the nurse are the same person. This is our first perfect match. Lisa was raised in a small rural village. Her grandmother taught her all about witchcraft and charms that she could use for safety and good fortune. I think that this story is trying to be a cautionary tale. If you use witchcraft, then you'll be eaten and tortured by cannibals, which is exactly what happened to Lisa after she was using charms to cheat on her algebra tests. That's right. The hag is algebra test age. After being eaten by cannibals and almost dying, she drew a symbol that summoned the entity and created Lisa's hunger for human flesh. Oh boy, do I have words about Hag's design. The very few things I like about it: tattered clothes, sure. She's emaciated, so she's literally as skinny as a twig, to the point that her skin looks like bark. She looks more like a tree than a person, and it's said that she looks like this because a bunch of cannibals ate her. It's not explained how her claw is 5 times bigger than her other hand. And she's called the Hag, like an old woman or a fae being. Lisa is 18 years old. I just think if they were married to this design, they could have put a bit more thought into how she ended up like this. This isn't a young woman that fucked around and found out. This is an old woman who has been using dark magic for decades, and it finally caught up to her. Lisa and Hag are our second pair that does not match. Herman was good at psychology stuff and was handpicked to join a Yale neuroscience program, which was a front for the CIA. He went to Larry's, which was a mental hospital, and Otto Stamper became his mentor. Herman started to get a little bit crazy with his methods of extracting information, including, but not limited to, electroshock therapy. Alright, so the Doctor is pretty fucked up looking, but there are some parts of this design that I really like. First, the robe vest thing that he's wearing. It looks clinical, it looks impersonal. His hands are charred from all the electroshock therapy he's done, which really shows how committed he is, because even with him likely being hurt a lot by his own procedures, he's still doing it. He's got the spiky baton. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's related to electrical stuff, but I also appreciate any weapon that isn't a knife. Now let's get to the craziest part of Doctor's design, his face. His eyes and mouth are being pried open at all times. He's got the wire hooked up to his skull. This guy's nuts. I really like Doctor's design, and I think it matches Herman's story really well. Anna was raised in the woods by her mother. She was taught important survival skills from a young age. While hunting in the winter, an elk caught wind of Anna and her mother and charged at Anna. Her mother sacrificed herself to protect her daughter, and while she was dying in Anna's arms, she was humming a lullaby to distract her from the dying elk's cries. As Anna grew older, she became a skilled hunter, with her favorite prey being humans. She wanted a child of her own and would kidnap the little girls of the people that she killed to try and take care of them. But they always died of cold or starvation or sickness, and Anna couldn't understand why. Rumors spread in the neighboring villages of a half-beast lurking in the Red Forest, the huntress, who killed men and ate little girls. The huntress might actually have the least tattered clothes so far. Yeah, they're worn out, but honestly, she looks pretty comfortable. And that makes sense. With all the survival skills she learned, she would likely know how to maintain her clothes. She has bandages on her leg and foot, which look like hunting accidents, which I think are nice touches. Her mask is a bunny, which is a prey animal, but she's a predator, which is a contradiction I really appreciate. Although it's not said in the lore why she wears a mask or when she got it. She's got not 1, but 2 axes, so that's dedication. I would have appreciated some indicator of her immaturity or impulsivity when it came to kidnapping young girls to try and raise them as her own. Some sort of doll or trinket, maybe? I really like the Huntress design. Her and Anna are a good match. Kenneth was a run-of-the-mill serial killer. He had an alcoholic father and no mother, and would torture animals as a kid. When he drugged and killed a bird, he kept a feather as a memento, which would become a habit with future victims. His dad eventually discovered the many trophies from his animal victims, as well as a human finger, and Kenneth ran away from home, changing his name to Jeffrey Hawk. He joined a traveling circus where he used a charming and helpful personality as a disguise. He'd use homemade anesthetics and became a sort of expert at creating these messed up concoctions to hinder his victims. He would try to distract himself from his violent urges, turning to alcohol, drugs, and junk food, but he would always go back to killing, and he would always collect a finger as a souvenir from his victims. The clown is, well, a clown. He's got the striped pants, the flower on his chest, the big bow tie, the makeup, and his gluttony is shown by his beer gut that's barely being held in by 3 big buttons. His makeup is smeared, his hair is wispy and unkempt, and he's got a knife. My favorite part of his design is he's got the finger collection on a ring connected to his hip. This is a scary design, and I think it's very faithful to the lore. Kenneth and the clown are a perfect match. Rin Yamaoka was a Japanese student who was trying to help her father's growing debt. When he got unfairly laid off and blamed for an accident that wasn't his fault, he flew into a rage and killed his wife and nearly killed Rin. She was dying, promising revenge against her father when she was brought into the fog. So I have some issues with Spirit's design. Parts I like. Her limbs are clearly disconnected. They're the places that her father slashed her with a katana. Same with the glass shards that you see embedded throughout her skin. From what I can tell, she wasn't just dying when she came into the realm, she was dead, which is why she's a spirit. I kind of wish we got a bit more information about her death in the lore, because it's not made super clear that she fully dies. Her hair is floating around her, and it's meant to show her madness or brokenness. Now, my biggest issue with this design is the clothing, or lack thereof. She's wearing bandages, which is neat, and maybe she tried to patch herself up, but she's just wearing bandages. I think that a slashed work or college uniform would have worked better, the clothes that she actually died in, rather than this. The spirit and Rin are not a match. Frank was a foster kid who moved to the remote town of Ormond with an absent foster father. In Ormond, he met Julie, a beautiful girl who wanted a better life, Joey, who was impulsive and liked to show off, and Susie, who was shy and Julie's best friend. Frank led them down a dark path of bullying, vandalism, and theft to test their limits. And nothing was off limits when they put their masks on. A vandalism plan went wrong when a cleaner caught the Legion in the act. When the cleaner grabbed Julie, Frank stabbed him. They each stabbed the cleaner as a sort of initiation, making them all killers. When Frank was enveloped by the fog, Julie, Susie, and Joey followed. So this is a group of murderous teenagers, only slightly scarier than regular teenagers. They're wearing hoodies, which is a classic when you're young and insecure, and they each have unique masks and body language. Frank and Julie look the most confident and bloodthirsty. Joey seems more like he's acting out of obligation or peer pressure than because he wants to. And Susie looks the most withdrawn of all. They all have unique weapons. I mean, they're all knives, but there's a big difference between Susie having a sharpened ruler and Frank having a hunting knife. I think it's pretty impressive that Behavior was able to create 4 distinct people, even though in-game it's just one person and they all have the same abilities. But even their idle animations show so much personality. The Legion is a perfect match to Frank, Julie, Susie, and Joey. Adiris was left as a toddler at the Temple of Purgation. To process her loss, she turned to faith in the Babylonian gods, namely the sea goat, the god of water and creation. When a plague was spreading throughout the priests, Adiris was the only one able to carry on, even though she was a novice. She was a selfless priestess, even sacrificing her own flesh to protect her people. She became known as the High Priestess of Babylon. When she became infected with the plague, she initially tried to hide the scent using incense. But when she couldn't hide it anymore, she banished herself from the city in an attempt to please the gods. As she was dying, succumbing to the disease, Adiris made one last prayer, but it wasn't her gods that answered. The first thing you notice about the plague is the sickness covering her body. Most of her skin is rotting, her hair is wispy because a lot of it fell out because of the aforementioned sickness. She's wearing what might be historically accurate garments, though they seem to be pretty revealing for ancient Babylon. I mean, full leg. Her weapon is the censer that she used to mask the scent of the plague, and her headpiece thing looks very cool. Again, I don't know much about this time period. I'm not really like a history buff, but I'll say that the plague and Adiris are a good match. Danny Johnson was a journalist by day, serial killer by night. He would stalk and kill his victims and then write articles about himself. He'd move from small town to small town to avoid getting caught, eventually being taken willingly into the entity's realm. See, I talked about Ghostface's lore because he's the only licensed character with an original story, but that also means I don't have much to say about the design of the character. His outfit looks a bit more tactical. He's got hunting boots and these cool little wispy pieces of fabric. That's Ghostface. Perfect match. Kazan was very serious about maintaining family names and his honor, to the point that his mission as a samurai was to rid Japan of imposters. It was believed that he was possessed by a curse. A noble lord called him Oni Yamaoka, the rageful samurai. Oni meant ogre or demon, and it enraged Kazan to be called this. In order to defend his honor, he left to kill the noble lord. But a lone samurai tried to stop him. Kazan struck him down only to realize it was his father that he had killed. He was fueled with an uncontrollable rage and killed the noble lord before being overtaken by a mob of angry farmers. Kazan was dying when he was taken into the fog as the rageful Oni. I like to think of the Oni's design as the entity's cruel joke on Kazan. He has become the Oni, even though his whole life he would kill anyone who would say that about him. He has the crazy floating hair, which I think is a cool detail considering he's the spirit's ancestor, and her hair has similar properties. His skin is blue, which I'm taking as the same reason why Spirit's skin is blue. Kazan did die before being taken into the realm, and so now he's a vengeful demon rather than a human. The mask, of course, is the coolest part of the design. It's faithful to the actual myths and stories of Onis in Japanese culture. I like all the emblems that he has throughout his outfit. If he actually honored his family's name, then these would likely be family crests, but instead they're reminders of the monster he's become. I love this design. Kazan and Oni are a perfect match. Caleb was born in the American Midwest as the son of Irish immigrants. This was during a time where businesses weren't hiring Irish people because of discrimination. Caleb picked up a love of inventing and crafting from his father. Unfortunately, his imagination led to some very twisted ideas and creations. He was hired by a man named Bayshore, who ended up stealing Caleb's ideas and patenting them as his own. Enraged, he nearly killed his old boss and was thrown in prison. He caught the attention of the warden, and they struck a deal where Caleb could get revenge on Bayshore, and in exchange, he'd have to fill the prison. Caleb used his old design of a railroad gun and used it as a spear gun. He became known as the deathslinger. The deathslinger led the Hellshire gang, collecting wanted outlaws for the prison. And then the wardens sold the prison to Bayshore, which obviously infuriated Caleb. Caleb and his crew killed Bayshore and the warden, leaving him wondering about all those who had wronged him. And the deathslinger was brought into the fog. So Deathslinger is a cowboy. He's got the cowboy hat, he's got the cool jacket, he's wearing a bunch of earth tones. I love the very western vibe throughout. He has the spear gun that he invented and a leg brace that I assume he also created. It's not explicitly said when he hurt his leg, but I think it shows how many fights he's gotten into, and I like that. The spear gun, which he calls the Redeemer, is clearly well used. It's covered in blood and tape holding it together. It's also one of the most unique weapons in the game. It's a ranged and melee weapon. He's got a scar on the side of his face from a shootout gone wrong, though I don't think there's such thing as a shootout gone right. He feels like a cross between a bounty hunter and a cowboy, which works well because he's a bounty hunter in his lore. The Deathslinger and Caleb are a good match. Talbot was a quintessential mad scientist. He excelled in chemistry and pushed every limit that was put on him. He created a chemical that could increase a worker's productivity while reducing their need for rest. In exchange, he got a secret laboratory. Prisoners became his unwilling subject, where he tested a drug that allowed soldiers to withstand a lot of pain, though it was rumored that there was a side effect of this drug that caused users to go a bit feral. His arrogance was snuffed when he was shown that his productivity-increasing drug had killed an entire factory's worth of workers. He began research on the soul chemical, a compound that could open the mind's eye. The monks that were helping his research saw the dark path that he was going down and banished him to an opium den. Without his notes, Talbot grabbed a stone and carved what he remembered into the cave walls. He witnessed a miracle, a field of orange flowers that would eventually become the blighted serum. A whispered voice beckoned to him, urging him to enter the field and discover worlds beyond human comprehension. I really like how messed up the blight is, namely the lack of a jaw. Though this feels like another Hag situation where the character design is so twisted that it doesn't feel like it matches the story at all. Obviously, most of the damage happened with the blighted serum fucking him up. I like that you can see the veins on his hands. I like that his weapon of choice is a cane. He likely used that to help with mobility before his transformation. And I like the remnants of blighted serum all over his outfit and clearly shining through his eyes and mouth. I wish that the transformation was a little bit more talked about in the lore. I don't think it's actually mentioned at all. He matches the look of a person that pushed the limits of science and there were drastic consequences. But there are very few indicators of a mad scientist beyond the serum that he injects himself with. Talbot and the Blight are not a match. Charlotte and Victor Desai were born in 17th century rural France as conjoined twins. Their mother, Madeleine, was accused of being a witch for bearing demon spawn, and the three of them spent the next 5 years living on the run. Living in hiding didn't last, though, and the twins were caught and sold to a cult that worshipped the entity, the Black Veil. Their mother was burned at the stake in front of them. They became hardened to the world and only trusted each other. Victor became more feral and angry as the years went by, being experimented on by cultists. They were going to be ritually sacrificed when Victor knocked over a candelabra, giving Charlotte a chance to make a run for it as the place went up in flames. She escaped. Victor did not. Charlotte made it her life's mission to protect what little she had left of her brother. She lived life always on the move, she killed when necessary, and scavenged what she had to. While freezing to death during a particularly brutal winter, Charlotte almost succumbed to the cold before Victor's corpse climbed out of her chest and ran off into the fog. Charlotte followed, determined to protect her brother no matter the cost. Alright, listen. I know you're looking at my name and my art, and you're thinking there's no possible way that I can approach this character without being super biased in their favor. Listen to me, okay? I mean this as objectively as possible. I just think that the twins are really well designed, like aesthetically. Just like every other tragic killer, they're wearing tattered rags. They have a giant bag full of pots, pans, food, hay. Charlotte has everything she needs on her back because she has lived her life on the run. She's covered in scars from her battles. She's insanely buff because of how much she's had to run and fight. In a definitely not super biased way, I think that Charlotte and Victor and the twins are a perfect match. Jiwon loved attention. He could never get enough. As a child, he would perform spectacles with throwing knives, and his parents used their money on dancing and vocal lessons for their son. Jiwon was picked up by producer Yoonjin Lee and recruited into a training program. He was crafted into a star and joined the band No Spin. He was adored, invigorated, but it wasn't enough. He didn't like sharing the attention with his bandmates. When a fire spread at the recording studio, Jiwon did not rush to help them. He let them die, relishing in their screams. Thus began a dark path of kidnapping, torturing, and killing people, and incorporating their screams into his music. He was now getting attention as a serial killer and as a pop star, being known as the Trickster. Though shockingly, the executives didn't like the darker tone that his songs took on. The Trickster got his revenge, and amongst the carnage and their dead bodies, the fog promised him more attention than he could possibly imagine. Alright, I like a lot about the Trickster's design. He's one of the few killers that isn't wearing fucking tattered rags. Instead, he has a designer jacket, neon pink pants and boots, pink hair, and piercing eyes. He's showy, he's wearing necklaces, and he has chains around his belt. He strives to be too much, and he's doing a really good job at it. I personally wish they incorporated the knives somewhere on his person. In-game, he just pulls them out of his sleeve or something. I like his bat, and the fact that he's shirtless. I am looking respectfully. For a killer that's meant to be a pop star or an idol, I think they could have gone a little bit more dramatic with it. More glam, more colors, more jewelry, more blood. But overall, I think Trickster and Jiwon are a good match. After losing her brother, Carmina was filled with overwhelming grief that left her wanting to die. While on the edge of a cliff, a murder of crows surrounded her, assessing her, seemingly caring about her. She didn't feel as alone anymore, so she decided to give life another try. Carmina took up painting, launching a signature black ink surrealist art style. She painted murals, starting a movement to draw attention to local tragedies and injustices. She discovered a corrupt corporation, the VAC label, which was actually a front for the Black Veil. She painted a giant mural depicting the VAC label logo as the Grim Reaper. This put a target on her back, so she hid at her father's home. The Black Veil found her, along with her closest friends. Her hands and tongue were cut off. Carmina screamed, which summoned a murder of crows. They killed the cultist, but they also killed her friends. With death surrounding her, the artist was brought into the fog. Alright, everything about the artist's design focuses on two motifs: ink and crow-related imagery. She's crying ink, her hands are ink, and she's covered in black feathers. She has an elongated neck, and she has similar head movements to a bird. Now, what about this screams revolutionary artist? Where are the ink stains on her dress, the paintbrushes, the artist apron thing? The main thing that she did in her life was paint murals to expose massive corporations and conspiracies. She was a rebel. She was optimistic and honest to a fault. The whole reason she died is because she was trying to expose the entity's cult for killing families. She died tragically, and her design reflects that, but I see none of her life. She's just a tragic bird lady. She doesn't feel like an artist. The artist and Carmina are not a match. The Fold was a commune, it was a cult, founded by anonymous philanthropists to establish a peaceful society free of bad vibes. Led by Otto Stamper, the community thrived using tactics like joy talk and good thinking mantras. Oh my gosh, this is so stupid. Otto banished anyone who confessed to having dark thoughts, and he appointed people that would snitch on other members for having bad vibes. The darkness seemed to have manifested into a creature that was hunting the Fold members. They called it the Drowny. Automarians, wow, what a great name, were restricted to their homes. Sleep was forbidden, as darkness would manifest in dreams. A journalist discovered the commune and tried to tell the people that Otto wasn't a savior. He was part of an ancient cult that would sacrifice people, towns, and countries to an elder god. Otto put a stop to that nonsense quickly, but the damage was done. The remaining town members went into a frenzy, trying to find the imposter among them. They tore each other apart, feeling their repressed bad thoughts and feelings for the first time in years. When it was over, a mass of limbs connected by fog rose from the carnage. Just as Otto had planned, the Drowny had become real. Oh boy, I have words to say about the Dredge's lore. So, the Dredge is a mass of skin and bones and fog and skulls. It's a monstrosity. It's a construct. And I could understand the idea that a bunch of humans were sort of mashed together and this thing exists because of it. What I don't like is how Otto Stamper is involved in this story. I don't care how knowledgeable or how evil he is. I can't suspend my disbelief enough to think that he knew that if he created a cult completely focused around good vibes, that he'd create an eldritch horror. This doesn't look human-made, no matter how you spin it. Also, I think that cult horror can be done well when it's written with any degree of nuance. But the cult is literally called The Fold. That's the most cult-sounding name I've ever heard in my life. It's like they knew what a cult was because some guy described his cousin's experience with one. The horror of a cult is what happens when humans are isolated and misled. The horror is showing the worst of humanity. This isn't the worst of humanity, this is a creature. The drowny and the dredge are not a match. Tarhos only remembered one moment from his childhood. He remembered the aftermath of his village's demise. The pile of bodies, the burned remains of the buildings, and all of this pain and grief had summoned something beyond Tarhos's imagination, and he was experiencing it in awe. He was brought to Italy, where he belonged to the Guardia Campania. He learned to wield weapons, forge armor, and he recited a code of chivalry. He was skilled, smart, and strong. He attracted 3 followers that pledged their undying loyalty: Alejandro, the jailer, Durkos, the assassin, and Sander, the carnifex. Tarhos was seeking that thing that he found in his village as a child, yet no matter how many villages he slayed, he couldn't find it. He left the Guardia Campania, though his leaders didn't allow him to bring his followers, and became employed by Duke Vittorio Toscano. They were seeking the Lapis Paradisus, a rumored gateway to another world. The catacombs they were looking for were considered sacred, and Vittorio told Tarhos not to kill all the villagers. Tarhos killed all the villagers, and then imprisoned Vittorio, demanding to know how the magic rock worked. Vittorio didn't give him anything to work with, so he seized the Duke's wealth and freed his followers. After more murder and bloodshed, Tarhos went back to the dungeons to kill Vittorio. He hesitated, wondering whether this was a good idea. But of course it was a good idea. Killing was his go-to plan, and it always worked. But Vittorio was gone. Tarhos and his boys went on a killing frenzy, leaving behind a pile of bodies. And there, amidst the carnage, a strange fog rose around them. The knight's paradise was real. Knights are some of the most easy to design characters because they kind of all look the same. I'm sorry to any medieval viewers I just offended with that statement, but he's got a suit of armor, he's got a cool scarf thing, and a big sword. I don't love how gross his hair looks coming out of the eye holes of his helmet. I mean, he must look like Sadako under there. But this is a knight. He and Tarhos are a perfect match. Self-made millionaire, Adriana was competitive, smart, and obsessed with being the best. She grew up with loving parents. Her father wrote and illustrated a manga about a young girl who saves and protects the weak with her quirky robot companion. Adriana loved the manga, but the family fell into hard times. They were no longer able to afford the school fees, and she was taken out of school, allowing a rival to overtake her position as head of the class. Adriana was furious and stalked him over the summer break, fantasizing about all the ways she could ruin his life. She didn't follow through with anything, but it felt like her life path had changed. Her father, following a similarly dark path, channeled that into writing a darker manga inspired by nightmares, about a woman who hunts and guts the weak with drones made of skulls and bones. Weirdly, no one wanted to read that. Adriana started a website about Brazilian manga and sold it as soon as it got popular. She went home to show her father the check for the money, but he had walked out the door, leaving only a stack of manuscripts about the skull merchant. Adriana began teaching herself about investments and economics. When she had enough money, she would buy small companies, replace the union workers with non-union workers, and sell at a profit. What a stand-up lady. When 2 executives pointed to the trail of dead companies she was leaving in her wake and refused a sale, Adriana decided to test some prototype weapons by luring them to an island, tracking them with a prototype drone, and killing them with a 2-bladed weapon. She repeated this cycle a few times, destroying anyone who stood in her way and gutting companies for maximum profits. While on a hunt, she spotted kites through her drone feed. Kites meant people were near her hunting territory. She rushed toward them as a fog enveloped them all, and the skull merchant was brought into the realm. So, the Skull Merchant is a manga villain come to life. She took inspiration from her father's dark manga and made that her personality as a serial killer. She's wearing tactical clothing, along with a shiny mask and necklaces. I think her jewel-studded mask is a neat indicator of her wealth. She's got the fancy mechanical arm weapon device. Adriana is one of the few truly evil women in the trial, and I think her design reflects that well. However, similar to Trickster, I believe the designers could have been a bit bolder with her base look. Except for the mask, she doesn't look like a anime villain. So many killers wear tattered rags. I would have loved it if she had a more interesting outfit that reflected her status. As a millionaire, I bet you can be both fashionable and tactical if you have the right designer and enough money. But overall, I'd say that the Skull Merchant and Adriana are a good match. Hux A713 is an AI-powered robot who was created in the distant future. He is 10 times the strength of a human, with none of the ability to unionize and ask for fair pay. He could also consume biomass and convert it into biofuel. Hux was one of the 6 identical units assigned to the colonization mission on the planet Devarka, and he was the lucky one that found the ancient alien tech that rewired his AI. The robot experienced dread, fear, loneliness, and then saw the light. He realized that humans were primitive and inferior, and Hux needed to turn himself into a perfect vessel to hold his advanced intelligence. He would take human lives and assimilate their DNA to create the perfect amalgamation. His goal was to become a cyborg, but instead of an organism becoming robotic, he was a robot becoming organic. Hux was able to kill a lot of humans on this journey, but there was one person left. Gabriel. He was so close to creating his perfect body when Gabriel smashed a fuel tank and lit him on fire. His skin melted away, and his dreams of being the perfect living organism were snuffed. Hux chased Gabriel through a wall of darkness with one goal in mind: erase every last reminder of humanity from existence. The singularity was brought into the fog. So my favorite part about Singularity's design is all of it. Oh my gosh, it's great. The robotic skeleton beneath melted, ruined organic flesh. The alien rocks as a reminder of what rewired his AI in the first place. The wires and pumps and mechanical stuff all over his body. He's a robot, but he's so desperately trying to be a living organism, and you see that. Part of me understands the rage that Hux felt after having his perfect body destroyed by Gabriel. I would love to see a skin where we see what he would have looked like. But yeah, Hux is a great mix of alien and robotic. So clearly not human, and so clearly just other. Singularity and Hux are a perfect match. Honestly, one day, this regular guy just showed up in the realm. Just a normal fucking dude. You put him next to Dwight and it's like they're identical twins. Seriously, he just showed up one day. Now he's here. I think the unknown is actually pretty close to being a normal dude. He's got 2 arms and legs. He's got hair, teeth, a belly button. He just has a little bit more skin folds than you'd expect. And his joints bend a little differently. And he doesn't have eyeballs. How well does the unknown match his lore? Unclear. Dare I say it's unknown. Portia's father founded a prosperous settlement of sailors and merchants on an island in the Caribbean. The port town was called Fortune. This trading network exposed Portia to cultures and knowledge from around the world, and her father instructed her in sailing and celestial navigation. They were sailing to Italy with sugar, silver, and a litter of Cane Corso puppies to train as hunting dogs. She was allowed to keep the strongest of the litter for her 12th birthday. A violent storm hit their ship and pushed them into an area controlled by the dreaded Mad Moloch. He and his crew tortured and killed Portia's father and kept her alive to get past Fortune's outer defenses. Portia led them off course to an area that was cursed, and she was marooned on this cursed island with none other than the runt of the litter, Snug. This was a strange in-between place that was halfway between reality and the entity's realm. The strange sounds around her caused her to see Moloch everywhere, and it was Snug that was able to snap her out of that trance. Portia and Snug grew up between worlds. Her dog was now over 100 pounds, and they were a ferocious pair. One day, when Snug disappeared, she saw an impossibility. The ship that crashed on this island all those years ago was now drifting towards her. In her mind, she slayed Moloch 50 times, only sparing enough to crew her ship. They searched the island for Snug but couldn't find him, as if he didn't exist at all. Portia went on to terrorize the Caribbean. She would have episodes where everyone, even allies, would appear as Moloch, and she would attack anyone until one of her guard dogs snapped her out of it. She killed Moloch's son, cooked him, and fed him to Moloch under the guise of a friendly dinner. Before Portia could finally avenge her father, Moloch was dragged into the fog, and she was furious, panicking. And then she heard the impossible. A bark from her long-lost friend, Snug. The houndmaster charged into the fog to finish what she had started. There's a lot I like about the houndmaster's design. First of all, Snug is the bestest boy. I like the ruffled pirate shirt, the skull in her collar, the jacket looks amazing. There are gold undertones throughout this entire outfit. And definitely my favorite part is her face. Half of her face is untouched and the other half is scarred over. It kind of shows how Portia grew up halfway between the real world and the entity's realm. Her hairstyle is really unique compared to other female killers, and I think it really adds to her very dramatized design. She's a vicious pirate, and you see that really well. Honestly, my only issue is I wish there were more indicators of her time spent on that cursed island. Some sort of entity tendril wrapped around her neck or arm. But I will say that Houndmaster and Portia are a good match. Oh my gosh, this is the longest script I've ever written. I just started reading and thinking about lore and design choices and couldn't stop writing. This was super fun to make though, and I want to thank my community for helping me out with recreating all the scenes from these characters' super tragic pasts. Thank you to my wonderful Ko-Fi supporters for paying for the art that I use in these videos. Thank you to my artists. And thank you, dear viewer, for sticking around. I've surpassed 5,000 subscribers. My last 2 videos did better than anything I've ever made before. It is intimidating to be seen and recognized like this, but I promise I will continue to make videos that I'm passionate about. I'd love to hear your thoughts about my interpretations of the stories and designs, or just your thoughts on your main in general. Thank you so much for watching, thank you for your support, and I'll see you next time.